friends, and welcome to the Living Truth Podcast. I'm Kristin Carey, hosting today, and very honored and excited for this conversation with my friend Lachelle Burkett. Lachelle, thank you so much for joining me on the Living Truth Podcast today.
Thanks for inviting me, Kristin.
Absolutely. So, Lachelle is the founder of Hope Redefined, an amazing ministry that offers groups and retreats and coaching for betrayed partners. Lachelle is an AppSats trained coach, and she has been on the board of AppSats and has contributed in so many different ways in this field of betrayal trauma. And today, Lachelle and I are going to talk about having a relapse safety plan. Basically, the need for us to be able to think ahead, to respond with clarity instead of crisis in a moment when, if or when, a relapse may occur. So, Lachelle, my first question for you is, why is this topic so important to you?
Well, the plan in and of itself was actually birthed from my own story. So there was 5 years of sobriety in my marriage. And I remember getting some nudging from a mentor at the time. And she said, well, what's going to happen if he relapses? And I remember going back to my husband and asking him that question, what's going to happen if you relapse? And he had an answer. He had been in a group and they had a plan, like when you're struggling, etc. He was actually doing a program that contains the 3 circles. So he had some language around that. And so he gave me his plan, told me the plan, right? And also talked about that he would probably leave the house for a period of time. And all of that felt right to me. And at that particular time in our story, we didn't have any children. And so all of that was like, okay, great. He found sobriety and he was sober for 5 years and then had a major relapse at work and came home, had to share that he was probably going to lose his job based on his behaviors, and immediately did exactly what his plan said. And so he packed his bags, he left the house. And at that particular season of life, we had 3 small children. We had a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old. And I remember that night when he walked out that garage door, I completely fell apart. Because what I know now, I didn't have clarity in the moment, was I had no idea what to do with me. Yeah. I knew his plan. And I was attempting to think that his plan was going to care for me. But the truth of the matter is that plan was designed for his care, which rightfully so. We needed him to have something that was going to help him recenter. And so out of that came this idea and this need to have some sort of plan to be able to go back to if and when a relapse happens. And so I just started putting it together and honestly offered it to a few clients, just places of brainstorming, and then realized this actually might be a tool that a lot of women would appreciate. So we started to formulate it a bit more and create a workshop with it. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I did attend your workshop that you just did through AppSats, and it was excellent, which is what precipitated me saying, I need her on my podcast to talk about this, because it is so important. And this is a scary topic for women who are newer in this area. Maybe you've had a discovery in the last year, and the idea that there could be a relapse has not even crossed your mind. And just hearing about this might make you feel really anxious. What I want to invite you to do, if that's the case, is take a couple deep breaths. And Lachelle, tell our listeners why this is a really great thing to do, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Sure. Why is it important to create a plan of how you're going to care for yourself and what you're going to do if there's a relapse?
Yeah. I think the importance behind this is beginning to recognize that even in the throes of a relapse, there's still choice and there's still an opportunity and possibility to care for yourself. I think it's one of the things that as we continue to heal as women from betrayal, there's that awakening or awareness of saying, the person that I thought was going to keep me safe forever is no longer that person. And maybe they will work to go back into that place of being someone who's safe. But I also need to learn how to keep myself safe. Not closed off, just safe, right? And so this plan is intended to help you have something that you can access in the moment of crisis. And what we find and what is true about having this type of plan for us is that it actually does 6 things. That's what we've kind of come up with, is that the first thing it does is creating a relapse safety plan does break denial. Trust me, every one of us has said, I'm never, ever gonna, ever, right? And then if and when it happens, you're in that position of going, oh gosh, I thought I had a real hard line in the sand, and now I don't know how to make this decision. Oftentimes I hear women struggle with the decision because of the circumstances of the relapse, or they're not even sure, is this a slip or is this a relapse? They're trying to find the category that this event should fall into. And then of course, they're also banking on what he said is true, which is, I'm never going to do this again. Right. And so but creating the plan, I think, breaks that denial that I would ever need it. And that is scary. I totally understand how scary that is. But the other benefit to it of having a plan is a level of accountability with self. What I see over and over again with clients as we're trying to navigate a relapse is in the moment of relapse and that crisis, it was reignited, there's trauma functioning, everything is just feeling out of control. 9 times out of 10, I will hear clients say that they can't trust their decision-making when it feels urgent. They don't like that rushed feeling. And so they get anxious and second guess. And then they're running out and asking 15 people for their opinions about her decision. And one of the gifts about having a plan is that you're going to have the opportunity to make these decisions for yourself from a state of regulation, that you will be regulated. Put all that together. Sorry, words are hard. But that you can be regulated as you're putting this plan together, which allows you to know, I trust myself. I trust the work I did. I trust that I can come back to this. And I'm not feeling like I'm making as rash decisions, which then makes me second guess myself. So it's one of the other things. And I'll just give a third one. We have 6, but a third one I would say that's really important is I see women consistently reestablish stability for themselves when a plan is in place. Because the plan, while I don't want to go make it, when I need it, it really does give me an anchor. I understand I'm coming back to something. And so I've had multiple women come back and say, I fought that plan all the way. I never wanted to make it. I didn't want to talk about those possibilities. But when I needed it, it was so grounding for me and so supportive. And I took a lot of guessing and thinking out. I just executed. So we liken a relapse safety plan to like a fire escape plan. And I think I probably talked about that in the training that you saw. And that I don't want to have a fire escape plan because I don't want my house to ever catch on fire. But the truth of the matter is we have a fire escape plan. My kids know exactly where we're supposed to meet when there's a fire. And so if and when we should need it, we know how to keep ourselves safe. And I would say that is the same principles that can guide us through a relapse safety plan is if and when we know how to keep ourselves safe.
I love that. I want to hear those other 3 parts
I'll
if you're
tell
willing
you.
to keep going.
Yes, absolutely. So another benefit or purpose behind the relapse plan would be forward thinking, self-care, and even ownership. Part of what I see with clients is trying to discern what is my job. Like he's out of the house, and I've just recently had a friend who's they're navigating a relapse. The husband is really upset because he moved back in with his parents, and he doesn't like it. And so he is communicating to her over and over again how this is her fault that he has to live with his parents. But there is an opportunity for us when we start to create a plan that also brings a lot of clarity around what is my job? Is my job to find him housing? is my job to provide comfort in the ways, whatever. I know that for me, one of the things that I didn't know an answer to was like, and this is so basic, but I was like, who's going to mow the grass? Am I supposed to do that? Because he left the house, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I start to panic thinking the whole house is falling on me, like responsibility. And then recognizing in the plan, and that's one of the areas that we work through, is what are things that will still stay his responsibility during a separation, if that's or during the relapse. Like there still needs to be ownership to what parts, but it also leads to self-care and obviously helping someone think forward. The next one I would say is offering safety with self, which I've kind of spoken to several times, but the thing that we struggle to regain so much in this journey is intuition and trusting our gut. And so that is one of the things that I see that stays intact in this aftermath, is that there is safety still there with myself. I can trust myself that I've made good decisions. I sought counsel before when I put this plan together. I trusted those people who helped me, and so I can stay safe with this plan. And then I would tell you that the last one is that it breaks the cycle of shame. And honestly, it's almost an instantaneous. It's kind of crazy to see how, because what we're doing is we're helping you feel empowered, right? I am empowered to make good decisions for myself. I am empowered to create safety for my kids if you have children in the home. But also, so often where we get tangled up in a relapse is, what did I do that wasn't enough that you needed to go back to this? And I think us having a plan starts to kind of eliminate that thinking that we had responsibility for it. And the truth of the matter is that we had a level of anticipation and preparation. And so it's not our fault, but we'll know how to manage it when we get there. So
that is so powerful. I recently had a woman tell me, because I use the word empowering a lot too, and I had a woman recently tell me that she felt like it was a bad word, like as a conservative Christian. And I was like, ooh, tell me more. And she was like, I always associated that word with like feminism. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And anyways, in unpacking this, what I've realized is that so many of us get caught in this belief system that we have to just be a submissive wife and just sit back and like just support him, or like not make things more difficult for him, because then he's just going to further relapse, right? Like making him more uncomfortable by saying, I need you to leave the house. But the reality is that God has given us power and agency, right? In our decisions, in our choices. And we do not need to just sit back and make things easier for everybody else. What our job is to take responsibility for our choices and to not have really firm boundaries in the face of a relapse, whatever those boundaries may be. And for the record, listeners, like, it doesn't have to be an out-of-house separation. I mean, that's on you. That's your choice, right?
Yes.
But having that choice in a moment of regulation to make this plan for what you do in relapse is empowering, translation to that word, in a way that might make more sense for our conservative Christian audience out there, is it gives you autonomy and the ability to own your choices and to own your responsibility for yourself and for your kids. I love this this whole plan, Lachelle. I feel like it's so practical, and all the reasons behind it, it's like, yes, this is absolutely essential. Okay, so what do you think are a woman's first steps to creating a plan like this? Like, I love all the reasons. Tell me what she would do.
Yeah. So let me offer a little distinction, because I know that there are some programs that help women construct a safety plan. And I just had a gal who was in our workshop that asked the question, well, what's the difference between a safety plan and a relapse safety plan? And I said, well, this plan is really intended to be for a moment in time, right? Safety plan is helping you take inventory of your life across the board. Like, what are things that I need to feel safe in this world or with this relationship, etc. This is more of an acute event, right? So this is a relapse or a slip. So, a lot of times what I find is that women have the ability to take certain parts of their safety plan and add it to their relapse plan, right? But it's so I want to put that out there to where you're like, I've already done this. Actually, it's a little different. So just to put it out there. But I would tell you that the very first place I encourage everybody to start is to have their definitions of what is a slip and what is a relapse. 9 times out of 10, your definition will be different than your partner's. And so in the one workbook we have, I actually have them go through and I have them write down their own definitions, the wife's definitions, and then if the relationship is safe enough for them to engage in a conversation with their spouse to ask them for their definitions, that encourages them to then come to a mutual definition. This is one of those places that I see women get tripped up often because they're feeling like the event that was just either they've just discovered or was told to them feels like a relapse, but their partner is saying, no, it's a slip. And they're going, okay, I have different responses to those 2 different events. So being able to get yourself a solid definition of this is a slip and this is a relapse, I really do think helps with clarity.
Do you make suggestions, Lachelle, like about what your definition would be? Just for our listeners who are like, I don't know what the difference is.
Absolutely. I would tell you, so I actually learned about slip and relapse from Deb Laser in her book, Shattered Vows. And what she speaks to is a slip and a relapse. The distinction between the two is frequency and intensity. And so, which I know still keeps that relatively vague. Like, okay, what does that mean? So, oftentimes partners will say, well, a slip is like within 24 hours or it lasted 1 day, that kind of thing. But a relapse would be a week's worth of acting out, or maybe it's engaging with another person. He slipped by scheduling a meeting with another person as someone of the opposite sex, and he didn't tell me. Versus relapse was he went to dinner with her 3 times, and it was a business trip and it was nothing, but still there's some intensity to that and frequency. So I think when you want to be able to come up with that definition, it is important to know it's going to be a little bit more customized to your experience and your story. Yeah. Now, here's where women do ask the question, okay, but how am I supposed to plan for everything and the possibilities, the potentials? And the answer is you're not going to. And that's really not what this is designed for. We're not asking you to get so micro in your plan that you can't, like you have to have just the right shape to fit in the hole in order to make this work. This is a framework for women to be able to say, okay, this is the event that's happened, and based on what I've written down and what I felt like was a slip or a relapse, I feel like it's going to land in one of these categories. And then it's going to help her know how to execute the plan moving forward.
That's so good. I love that. So that's the first step. And then what would come next?
So then the next thing I would say is beginning to consider what are your needs. In the immediate moments after these types of things happen, and then also some longer term. So I would say a framework of like within 24 hours versus 1 month. And that's going to help you really kind of frame up what are your needs. And we provide 6 categories to consider. So there's the physical, emotional needs. There's the home needs. There is child needs, spiritual needs, relational needs, and financial needs. And I can speak into some of those a little bit to give some examples. So physical and emotional needs oftentimes come in play of where this is where they may be specifically geared toward the betrayer. I need space from you. I don't want to sleep in the same room with you. I need to know that I can go to my sister's for the weekend, etc. Like she's going to be able to lay out some of her physical needs that she would have and determine. The other thing we'd like to help them do is this a need for a slip? Is this a need you have if there's a relapse? Or maybe it's both, and it can be both. But being able to lay out, these are some of my actual needs that I'm going to have pretty close. The next would be to move into the home. So I mentioned mowing the grass or, taking care of the bills or whatever that might look like, that you're just like, oh, if this happens, who's going to take care of that? that is the spot that you're going to start documenting that of like, in my home, I want to write down that he's going to still mow the grass. I don't care where he's staying. He's going to drive back to the house. He's going to mow the grass. It's still his responsibility. So those are some of the home needs examples.
Can I throw something in here, Lachelle? Because I've seen this happen so many times. Having clarity, if he is moving out, about how you would want him to come to the house. For example, please always ask me if this is a good time. Give me a 24-hour notice. Do you want him to have a key still? Do you want him to come in the bedroom? I mean, there, you can go real micro with all of the house related stuff because there is a shift in, it's not business as usual in your marriage. There is a shift where there has to be a focus on safety, and you may not want him to just drop by unannounced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say for women who might be on the opposite end of that, where they don't know, they're like, I don't know what I'm going to want in the moment. Simply writing down that I have permission to determine how he comes into the house in your relapse plan is still giving you a plan. Right?
Absolutely.
Being able to know that I have permission to decide and come back to this if and when that is needed in the future. But I want to have it down so I remember versus waiting to be triggered because he just walked in the house unannounced and I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Having those options for yourself is really helpful. Okay, keep going.
So the next one is child needs. This one for me has felt, as my kids have aged and life changes, that particular category has changed for sure. But what I've had in that category before has been who are my emergency contacts for my kids? If I find out that this happens and they're at school and I have to do car line pickup, I want to know who I can call and in a moment to say, can you just grab my kids? I have a family emergency, and leave it at that. Right. And I've got several mom friends that they're not that inner circle. They're not going to get that detail from me, but they would 100% pick my kids up and not be worried a bit about the fact that they had to do that. So putting that down for myself combats the lie. And I think the default we all go to, which is I'm all alone and I have to take care of everything by myself. And this all just blew up in my face. And now I got to suck it all in and go do the next thing with my kids. And being able to put something like that in your plan, the hope is that it's going to start giving you a little bit more room to tend to yourself and your kids even.
Yeah. Well, and with the kids piece, and you may be about to say this, but I'll just jump in and say a plan for parenting time. Even though there's not a legal separation going on necessarily, making a plan for when will he be with the kids, and will you still be at the house or will you leave? Will he be with the kids at the house? Will he put them to bed and feed them dinner? Will you provide the food, or is he going to provide it for himself? Those kinds of things are great things to think about with in the kid category.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it may feel that all of those details may feel overwhelming in the instant, right? But being able to, again, we talk about having a 24-hour decisions versus a month decisions. And those are things that are going to fall in that month situation of okay, he's going to want to be with his children. I can't keep him from his children unless there's some legal things going on. But absolutely, having an understanding of what those needs are going to look like for them. I've had partners put things in there for child needs, they've written down who's going to disclose what's happened to the kids or how they want that to happen. Do I want it to be a joint thing? Do I want him to tell them themselves, etc.? And you're going to know what's best and what's right for your kids. So, but that was another thing that she documented. So
that's really good. Really, really good.
So, and then moving into financial needs. This is a category I think oftentimes we don't necessarily put it first up in the front. And I understand that, for myself too. But what I have found is that I've had multiple partners who financial betrayal has also been a part of the story. And so as they start working on their relapse plan, they make the decision that they would like to have a personal checking account that they put a certain amount of money in every month. Because if there should be a relapse, they do not want to feel financially stuck. They want to know that they have an option in that. And so it's not necessarily that they're squirreling away money and nobody knows about it. I don't know, to each his own, but that's not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for that to be a supportive effort, that they have the ability to do what they need financially. But other things that can come under that financial category would be who's paying the bills. No one's taking money out of the account. No one's, those types of things. And maybe it is just for me to write down, don't empty the checking account, like to not do that, just out of a place of fear. But being able to put our minds around what would be financial needs on the backside of this. I have some women who've said, I'm going to keep Visa gift cards. And I know that I will load those up every once in a while. And so she's going to have a stash of that. So should she need them, she can. But also I've had situations where women's partners have attempted to cut them off financially.
Yes.
And she needs to be able to have that written down that that's not legal. Like he can't do that technically. So then what does she do? Okay. So she needs to report that and like there's things we can add to this plan that would really help in that place of urgency.
And I have suggested to women whose husband becomes erratic or power and control before she pulls the trigger on a separation where there's contention there. I have advised a woman to go to the checking account, open up a separate account, and remove half of the money.
Yeah.
Because
you are entitled to half of it. Yeah.
Yes. And even though it's not legal for him to empty the whole thing and revoke her ability to access it, it happens, and it's sometimes not recovered.
No. Yes. I agree.
So I think that how a relapse safety plan is going to go is very different with a husband who is generally open, broken, and willing versus one who has a power and control mindset. I think what you're describing is primarily aimed towards a husband who is willing to be collaborative, who has a level of humility and openness.
Maybe, yes. I know that hasn't been my story, and using this plan was important to have that because there wasn't that open, broken.
Yeah.
And part of what was coming at me was a ton of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. Yeah. And so not having that, what saved me was having this written down.
Yes.
Because I didn't second guess. I was like, no. I made these decisions when I was clear-minded and our world was fine, right? And things were stable. And so I know that this is an appropriate step for me to take. But when he's escalated and things were hostile and I'm being told that I'm irrational and I'm breaking rules that I don't even know about, etc., I needed to be able to come back to this to know I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Yes. And you're right. The whole of the plan is necessary no matter what his attitude is. But that financial piece, if a woman's dealing with power and control, manipulation stuff, your need to act on your own behalf to advocate for your safety goes way up, and the way that you might go about doing that might be different so that you don't end up destitute.
Right. Absolutely. And I've had partners who have shared their relapse safety plan with a trusted friend or mentor in an effort to also have that additional layer of support, knowing that this is not a safe environment for me. So they have that person who can also advocate and go, no, remember we wrote this down together. Mm-hmm. This is where we're headed. So.
Yeah, because all of us lose connection with our frontal lobe and our logic when we're in crisis. So that's part of why this is so important. Okay, so I think you covered 3 of the areas, right? Financial, kids, and home.
And then physical, emotional. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Relational needs. Relational needs is really important. I mean, this is the space that I encourage women, because this is where we combat that I'm all by myself. And so I'll just give you some of mine because I think hopefully it'll help trigger some of it. So one of the things that I wrote in there was, do not call your mother. I know, terrible. But I have a tendency to, in my state of crisis, I want to go to a place that feels comforting, that my brain is perceiving should be comforting. And that is not a comforting or safe relationship. And so time and again, I have made that phone call and then it blows up in my face. And now I'm dealing with 2 crises instead of just the one. And so I needed to do that for myself. That was a relational need that I had to document. But I also wrote down who were my people. Mm-hmm. And what I oftentimes encourage women to consider doing is as they're building their plan, that they would actually reach out to the people they want to put on there and say, I'm building a plan. Would you be okay if you are my relational connection or my need if I need it? Because I think hearing them give us their yes makes it like, okay, I'm not going to inconvenience. She has agreed to be in the chaos with me. And so being able to add them there is just, it's such a supportive step for ourselves in that moment. So always putting on the don'ts and the do's.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I love that.
Yeah. And then the last one is spiritual. And I know that, I think your and I's communities are predominantly Christian women. Yeah. And so for me, that was a really critical piece for me to have. Like, I so desperately wanted to make sure that I had God's word as a part of this conversation or this crisis with myself. But I knew that in the past, when I'm in crisis, that's not the place that I'm going right away because I can't read my Bible, my brain's not working, I'm not retaining things, etc. And so being able to pull out some of these truths that I could grab onto so quickly, whether it was lyrics from a song or it was scripture that I needed to hold close, and it's all just captured in this one little spot for this event, was so, so important for me. And so that's what we invite women to do is go, okay, what is the spiritual needs that you have in that space too?
I'd love to add to that list.
Yeah.
And some women need to think about, like, do I want to keep attending church together?
Absolutely.
Like, if my husband wants us to pray together every day, do I have the right to say I need a break from that? And yes, you do. And yes, you do have the ability to take a break from attending the same church or the same church service. And so those are other areas of spiritual need that may change with a relapse.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree. Some women have written, do I want to tell my care pastor? Do we not want to tell the care pastor?
Right.
If they're on staff or working at church or volunteers, like what is a need in that space? So,
okay. Absolutely. And a lot of the women in Women in the Battle in my community are pastors' wives or ministry wives.
Yes.
And so spiritual and vocational needs, I mean, there's a risk of job loss. There's all kinds of other areas that are risky when there's a relapse.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure our listeners are like, holy smoly, that was a fire hose of things I have to identify. So I just want to encourage, like, this is not something you should be expected to do on your own.
No.
There is such a gift that comes from doing this in a group, in a small group, with a coach, in order to help you kind of sit back and, I joke when I do the workshop, I'm like, this is the time that you are allowed to copy off of anybody's paper. Copy away, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. And so being able to do this in a community setting is really, really productive. And it does take some of the overwhelm out. Like, well, what if I don't think about everything? You're not going to remember and think of everything, right? But that's the gift of having community, because different experiences. And then 2, it does take a little bit of I have to do all this by myself. So.
Absolutely. Do you have like a worksheet or do you have any kind of a PDF that we could give our listeners with this information? Yeah. Okay. We'll link that in the show notes, you guys. Okay. A couple other questions. I mean, I have so many more questions I could ask you, but I'm gonna have to pare it down. Okay. What do you think are common mistakes that women might make when they're creating or using a relapse plan?
I think some of the common mistakes is not finishing it. They start it, but they don't finish it. And then when the time comes.
Having a person you're doing it with is a great accountability.
Absolutely. So, but that is a pretty common, like I've had women who've done workshops or coached with me a few times, and then they're like, I never got back to it. And I'm like, and they need it, right? The moment has come.
Right.
I think other pitfalls would be trying to be entirely too specific, like especially with the event of the relapse. Like if he does A and B and C, then that's a relapse. But if he does this and this, then it's a slip. And getting very, very focused in, because as many of us know, our stories, there's half the time where I have women say, I've never even thought of doing something like that. How did he even think to do that behavior or activity?
Yeah.
Like, so what we're saying is like, we're not going to be able to predict. And that's really not the goal of this. The goal of this is to create a plan, regardless of the details that bring you to this moment. So just trying to take some of that pressure off of like predicting what's going to happen in order to know what you'll do. Your responsive actions can still be the same, as long as you feel confident in them, right?
Yeah. That's really good. Okay, how do you think that faith and practical preparation coexist when planning for possible relapse?
I actually just had a friend talk to me about Hezekiah as a king. And I think that is very applicable here in this moment, because when he was going into battle, he brought his plans before the Lord and he said, I don't actually know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So can you lead us, right? Will you lead us? Of course he'll lead us. And I think that's a beautiful picture of what we're attempting to do here. We have a plan. We're going to set this plan. Yes, and the Lord is still in charge, right? And so if and when that relapse happens and it looks very different, but the beautiful part about this is that you have already started to use the skills to build a plan. So in the moment of crisis, you're going to have already done something. So it's a matter of adapting versus starting from nothing. Yes. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
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 And I think that's how those intersect, is watching how God has done this for others. He has met them in their plans and he continues to lead. So
he sure does. Both you and I have lived through relapses that resulted in ultimately the loss of the marriage, divorce, which I know for some of our listeners, that option is unthinkable.
yes.
The possibility of a relapse, unthinkable. The possibility of ending a marriage is unthinkable. And friends, we just want to tell you that you can survive, and you not only can survive these unwanted outcomes or these unwanted situations, but you could actually thrive. And sometimes it's the fear of the unknown that is worse than anything else.
Yes, absolutely. It was the fear, right? It was the thing that kept me up at night, was the wonder. How is this ever going to work out? How is this ever? And I'll share this too, because I think I have found that it's connected with a lot of women. I had a friend when I was facing off with the decision to divorce, and I knew the Lord he was instructing me, like, it is time.
Yeah.
And I just had such a feeling of dread. And I had a friend say to me, I think you're misunderstanding this, Lachelle, because I think this is a rescue mission. And I said, but I didn't want this to be the rescue mission. I wanted the rescue mission to be that he would come in and fix the relationship and fix the other parties, etc. I don't want this rescue mission. I was like, no, thank you. And I had this picture come to mind of me like floating out in the sea, right? And God comes up and he's in a boat and he throws this life ring out to me. And I put it on and I'm like, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good day. And he's like, no, get in the boat. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not interested in getting in the boat. And he's like, I'm going to rescue you. And I'm like, that wasn't my plan. My plan was not to get in the boat, right? Because I'm like, what are we going to do? Are we going to leave the sea? I can't leave the sea. Like, I have to stay here. And the Lord's going, get in the boat and we'll talk about it. And then I get in the boat and then I'm mad that I'm in the boat.
Right.
Yes. And by the way, he didn't push me out of the boat. Thank you. And I just want women to feel that like acceptance of our wrestle with some of these decisions, because this wasn't the story I was writing at all. So,
that, Lachelle, I love that our stories can kind of have this touch point of the unwanted end of a marriage. I had my son about 4 or 5 months after I first realized that my husband had a sexual addiction and had cheated and all of that. And so we named him Josiah, which means the Lord heals. And I really felt like this was a prophetic statement about God is going to heal this marriage. And this is going to be a testimony, right? And fast forward a year later, on my son's first birthday, I was divorced. The marriage had ended. And I felt like kind of duped. Like, Lord, I thought you were going to heal. And what I realized over time is he does heal. And he was healing me.
Yeah.
He was healing my soul.
Yes.
It just wasn't the outcome that I wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a relapse does not have to end a relationship, friends. I mean, there are people with sex addictions that do really truly change and transform. It's really their choice and their willingness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. I don't want to say that a relapse is a death sentence by any means.
It's not. Nope.
But there are choices, there are actions and steps that are taken. We're always saying we're collecting data, right? And
Yes.
so even in a relapse, there's data to be looked at, to be considered. How are things being responded to? Are boundaries being respected? Is there kindness even? Maybe not empathy and compassion, but is there kindness and respect, etc.? Those are all important things to be watching for in the aftermath of a relapse. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Was there anything else you feel like is important for our listeners to know about this relapse safety plan before we close out our conversation?
I think I'll just mention that I can't stress enough about the community aspect of this work. And I know that is a place that women long for, is to have safe community and people that they're going to be able to lean in on. And one of the things that I see a lot of times is women doing our virtual groups, right? And they're in these virtual communities, but there's still something that they're just not feeling connected. I am going to tell you, as the woman on the other end of the phone, as a group facilitator, those gals in your group want to talk to you.
Yeah.
They want to exchange phone numbers. Nobody's brave enough to do it just yet. So be the brave one. Ask for the phone numbers and the emails, because all of you are saying the same thing to me, right? And I joke and tease them all the time in my groups, but I'm like, it's a truth. Like, women are longing for authentic, deep relationships with each other. And as much as we would love to be able to find that in school mom friends and maybe people at church and a Bible study, if it's not there and you're seeing it sit on a screen with you, make it happen. Just lean into that, because those are the people that are going to carry you through these really dark days. And they don't have to necessarily be sitting in your living room to still be an incredible support system.
That's right. In fact, sometimes the fact that they're not there in person there's some blessings to that.
Yeah.
And these are women who understand. They really do. So, Lachelle, thank you so much for the wisdom and hope and clarity that you're sharing with our audience and friends. We would love it if you haven't already, if you would take a moment to rate and review the Living Truth podcast. That just gives us the opportunity to reach more people with messages of hope and healing. And until the next episode, I am holding out hope for you. Hello.